You have scoured the podcast world and finally found us, Newsworthy with Steve and Jerry, where we delve into all things mysterious, macabre, or out of this world, and decide if they are truly newsworthy. 2 words and 2 question marks.
Hello, I'm Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. Tax season is upon us. Did you know that 47% of Americans are planning to use their tax refunds for everyday expenses, home improvements, and vacations? What if you used your tax refund for a new home instead? Again, this is Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. Your tax refund can be used towards down payment, closing costs, or paying down existing debt to help get approved. So before you spend that tax refund, let's get together and see how to best utilize those funds to invest in your future and your new home. Call or text me at 502-680-0953. Again, that's 502-680-0953. NMLS ID 448-9008, Das Acquisitions LLC, doing business as USA Mortgage, NMLS ID 227262. This is not a commitment to lend. Additional terms and conditions apply. USA Mortgage is an equal housing lender.
Well, man, I am beyond stoked that we got to have at least minutes with Ed Locke.
Absolutely.
Ed has, I think I said it before, but Ed has supported us through from the very beginnings almost. He was with us even when some people could have dumped us when our shows weren't that good, when I was very sick. He stuck right by with us, always has stuck with us. And, guys, we continue to try and want to get better every episode. That's the thing about doing this. That's the, if we just wanted to hop on and beat around, for lack of better terms, dick around, we certainly would not want to bother people with their sponsorships and stuff like that. And so when we're looking back over some of our older episodes, this one, which had so much promise, we was all over the place. The sound quality was bad, wasn't happy with that. So we wanted to redo it from the beginning, from scratch. Also want to take another quick minute and thank our brand new sponsor, Smoking Guns beef jerky out of Nebraska. Those guys, we had some tonight. I thought it was a little spicy, but it says it right in the title, spicy teriyaki. Very good. Everybody gives it a huge 2 thumbs up, I think. But check them out. Use our promo code. You get 10% off. Promo code is Cryptid10, all capital letters. So try that out. Get you 10% off and get you some. And a lot of times when you go to order some of this stuff, it's like stupid expensive. This is the same price you pay for it at Walmart.
Right.
That's the beauty of it. And it's a very good value, I think. What do you think, Jerry? You're the food connoisseur.
It was one of the best jerkies I've had in my entire life.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
A little bit of a clarifier, to be honest. I don't eat a ton of jerky. This stuff, you can tell that the meat is very high quality. It's lean. It's not some piece of junk. I was very impressed with the quality.
For fat.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the quality of this stuff.
Yeah. I know that I get some and it's like, oh, you just can't eat half the bag.
Yeah, like you were saying, you get the big brand of what it was, Jack's jerky.
Jack's Links or something like that.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And the one thing in talking with Joe Perez is the marketing manager and co-owner of, Smoking Gun. First of all, I got to speak with the co-owner to set this whole thing up. That's amazing. They really believe in giving back to the community, especially around in Nebraska where they're at. They give as much as they get almost. They have to stay in business, but they absolutely try to reach out to all of the charities that they can help. Check out their website. It shows a little bit about them, about everything. The coolest part about Joe was he could name every person that worked at Smoking Gun beef jerky, and that to me says a lot. So check them out.
Memory's not real good. Again, the code for the discount,
Cryptid 10.
Cryptid 10.
All capital letters.
PTID.
Yeah, that was something we had to come up with kind of quick.
I know
and-
it's funny that you were like, I wonder if people can spell it, and then you asked me, and I was like,
Made you doubt yourself.
Well, I wanted to
it's
make
one of
sure.
and please, audience, don't think I don't believe that you can spell. It's one of those words that, to me, is deceptively hard to spell.
Well, I was like, is it a Y or an I?
Right,
That's why I was like, I just wanted to make sure.
right.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. It's one of those, you know, it's kind of like one of those psychic words that sounds one way but is spelled a different way. So
Right.
just Cryptid 10 gets you 10% off smoking gun barbecue or smoking gun beef jerky in Nebraska. So the episode we're covering tonight is we're revisiting Atlantis. And I am beyond excited for this. The last episode, the sound quality was kind of bad. We were kind of all over the place. I'd maybe had too much wine.
No, I think I was the one at fault. I was just literally bouncing around. What's the Tigger? I was like a freaking Tigger, man, just all over the place.
Well, you know. It's
Well,
okay.
when you're on the wrong side of the argument,
Yeah,
it's kind of
okay.
hard to.
Yeah, you
organize
have to
your
do
thoughts.
that. It's a confusion.
Yeah,
Well,
you're just
I
trying
would
to-
say this. During dinner, Mr. Locke joined us at dinner. He didn't eat since he's on a carnivore diet, but we briefly explained it. He agreed with me, so I've already
didn't even get
convinced
the
one
same eyepiece.
person.
What do you
How
think?
many have you convinced?
Well, I didn't hear any of that conversation, Brett. So I'm
we
with
didn't
you.
have a conversation. It was just he just already didn't believe. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. Well, there you go. So let's get into it. Who
Yeah.
wants to go first tonight? I'm okay with whatever. I just love this topic, and I think that, and I know Jerry's going to try to slam him, but I really respect Graham Hancock. I think he's a wonderful human being. He's very knowledgeable, and
He's a pothead.
so I voted
And
for a
his-
pothead for president.
Yes,
I'm
you
just
did.
going to let you know
Which
that.
says a lot.
Gary Johnson.
In
Woo!
Graham Norton's own words,
Hancock.
Graham Hancock's own words, I'll send you a link to the TED Talk if you would like to hear it. He was on a 24-year permanent high
Okay.
that he describes as 16-hour-a-day high. Now, if that is your expert, a dude who supposedly has pseudoscientific beliefs, but has never submitted not a single one of his ideas ever for peer review, which is the way that we achieve scientific
That's why we're
greatness,
going to
right?
look at the evidence. We're going to see.
His evidence.
Well, I'm not actually pulling for his research at all. So,
Well, there you go.
Okay, please tell us about your
well, here let's start with
pothead.
where do we get the story of Atlantis?
Yes, let's start there.
So, we get the story from two of the Socratic dialogues, which was basically just a collection of dialogues that Plato wrote back in around 360 BC. One is Timaeus, and the other one is Critias. So both were said to have been Egyptian stories that were passed down. So the story of Atlantis, according to Plato's writings, Atlantis' mighty empire that ruled over several other islands and parts of the continents of Africa and Europe. Atlantis was arranged in concentric rings of alternating water and land, with the canal running through the center. There were mountains in the northern portions and along the shore. Atlantis was also known for its advanced technology, science, and engineering, and was home to palaces and temples. It was said to have had an abundance of precious metals such as copper and gold. Atlantis was a utopian society where people lived in harmony and prosperity. The first king was said to have been Atlas, who was said to have been the son of Poseidon. And then the story of Atlantis, according to Plato, was said to have been passed down by poets, priests, and others, and had eventually sunk due to earthquakes and floods caused by people's rebellion against the gods. So that's kind of just an overview of where we get the story of Atlantis. Like Jerry's probably going to say a little bit later, we don't have any other writings on Atlantis other than from Plato. So that definitely puts a little tick on the maybe it's just made up, and I know you're going to get into that, but
Maybe it's Maybelline.
so why
That's an old joke.
so so why do we why are we still interested in Atlantis? Like, what about Atlantis is kept us going, kept us talking about it for 2,000 years?
It's because we don't know. I think, you know, I think that mystery and curiosity is one of the best things about humanity, our curious nature. And we have had enough evidence come about that keeps us interested.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's kind of, it's like it's just a legend that people have clung to, because this is supposed to be a utopian society that just miraculously got wiped off the face of the earth. There's no sign of them anywhere. Nobody knows where they were exactly located. Obviously, we have descriptions from Plato, but a lot of what we suspect about Atlantis is just. I feel like. I feel like when you look at this story, I think that, so just right off the bat, I think that Atlantis was a real place. I think that a lot of the like religious undertones of, like, the gods had, basically started this utopian society. I think that could be exaggerated as it's got passed down. I mean, if you've ever played,
could be. You think it definitely
yeah,
is?
I think it definitely is. If you ever played the game Telephone, I mean, that's just because it seems like this wasn't passed down in writings, and if it was, we don't have those writings. We don't have access to that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about who the Atlanteans were,
Yep.
if you would. So, again, most people think they were a legendary people, and according to Plato's writings in Timaeus and, how do you say that word? Critias, was powerful and highly advanced society that existed thousands of years ago. So what we know about them, what we think we know about them. Gods and kings. Plato describes Atlanteans as being descended from the god Poseidon, a Greek father of the sea who fathered children with a mortal woman, Cleito, and their descendants formed the ruling family of Atlantis. The first king was Atlas, Poseidon's son, who became the namesake for the entire island. According to Plato, Atlas was both a powerful leader and a symbol of the Atlanteans' great strength. The capital city was suggested, as Brett said, to be a series of concentric rings of land and water, with the capital city being a marvel of engineering and architecture. Their culture and technology Atlanteans were described as having extraordinary knowledge in many areas: agriculture, engineering, astrology, and especially in naval technology. The capital city had impressive canals, bridges, and grand buildings made of precious metals. They built large palaces, temples, and they even dedicated one to Poseidon. They had, according to Plato, they were abundantly rich with natural resources, including man, I can't even say the word. Auricucalicum? Is that how you say that? We'll say
Good to
that.
me.
Auricucalicum, a metal that was said to be more precious than gold. The city had abundant forest, fertile land, and mines full of very, very valuable metals. As I said before, they were a naval powerhouse. The Atlanteans boasted a powerful navy and military, which allowed them to expand their territory across parts of Europe, Africa, and they were even able to conquer neighboring regions due to their advanced military technology. Now, here's the one place that I have to agree with Jerry. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Because if they
Everyone
had,
does eventually, so don't feel bad.
if they had went into Europe, had went into Africa, why do we not have record of them there?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I have to make that point because I'm not being fair if I don't. Now, according to what most people believe, including and this is kind of where it comes into Plato's writing and the thought of it maybe being an allegory or a parable. Their initial virtue as being virtuous and morally upright, the civilization was initially founded with a strong sense of justice, with each subsequent ruler taking great care of the land and its people. However, Atlanteans became increasingly greedy, indulgent, and corrupt. They began to desire more land, power, and wealth, which led them to engage in many wars of conquest. Their desire for expansion had led them to attempting Athens, and again, where's the writings? We see the writings of, man, never mind. I can't. My brain is just not working. But which was at the time the last remaining powerful city-state that resisted them. According to Plato, the gods grew displeased with the moral decay of the Atlanteans, and as a punishment, Atlantis was struck by a cataclysmic event, likely an earthquake and a flood that caused the entire island to sink into the sea in a single day and night, vanishing without a trace. And we can go into some theories and stuff here in a minute. I don't want to take up everybody else's time, but I can see a lot of parable in that. You know what I'm saying? I can see a lot of, oh, you better do this or this was going to happen. The Bible's full of them. Atlantis could very well be that, and I agree with you that there is obviously some kernel of truth. This civilization and greed existed, I believe. Now, whether they were at the level that is written about, who knows? If Plato was there and could write about the Atlanteans, why didn't anyone in Greece write about them? Why didn't anyone in France just a little while ago? They found a cave that had been previously undiscovered with an alien drawn in it. An alien ship that's undisputable. You can't deny that that's what it is in this cave amongst the wildlife that was drawn. But there's nothing other than Plato with the Atlanteans. But Jerry, what do you think? You got anything to add before we get into your hardcore decimation of Atlantis?
I don't. No, I'll save it for that.
Okay.
So I do want to just make one comment. So we're talking about a civilization that was roughly 10,000 years ago. So if we think back to just when the Bible was put,
like 11,000 from now.
Right? Yeah. So 10 to 15,000.
He said it was 9,000 years before him, and he was before Christ.
Right. Yeah. So if you look back at just the first parts of the Bible, it's suspected that was written around 1200 BC. So we're talking about 7,000 years before then.
Sure.
So it's really hard for us to fathom how long ago this was.
Yeah. We have nothing written history. What's the oldest written history? I think it's Egyptian that goes back roughly 3,500 to 4,000 years BC.
But we're talking about still exists today, beyond measure.
But we're talking about, like Brett is saying, 4,000 years BC sounds like so long ago, and is. But we're talking about roughly 8,000 years beyond that.
Right.
So, very long time ago.
And if it was taken out by some sort of catastrophic event, it could have buried a lot of that stuff that we just haven't discovered yet. But
there are theories out there that the Earth undergoes a cleansing, if you will, every so many hundreds of thousands of years.
It's more like millions, not
a
few thousand. But I'm familiar with what you're referring to, and it literally is millions of years.
Yeah.
That scientists
polar
say
shifts,
tectonic
movements. Polar shifts are the biggest theory because that would encourage a rapid tectonic shift, a tectonic movement. Asteroids. Here's the thing when we start talking about things that happened so long ago, and to me this is the thing that I like to cling to a little bit. People don't use the same language now that they do then. If we don't know a word, we Google it and we find the word that describes what it is we're trying to describe. Back in those days, they just had to write it looked like a whatever in the best way that they could possibly describe it. Even the most poetic people, the most learned people, had a very small vocabulary back then.
So we are closer to the first writings of the Bible than Plato was to the Atlantis sinking.
Wow, that's insane.
According to his own words.
Right.
Yes.
So,
It was really a long time ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
all right. So where is it? Who wants to go first?
Jerry, go first.
Well, if I believe that it existed, which
If you
I do
believe
not,
that it, okay.
we'll get into why later. I would have to say that it existed exactly where Plato said it existed. Why? Because as both you gentlemen have mentioned earlier, Plato doesn't exist. I'm sorry, Atlantis doesn't exist without Plato. There's no record of it ever being mentioned anywhere at any time by anyone. So you can't believe in Atlantis without believing in Plato's writings. And you have to take it not metamorphically, not in allegorically, but literally. If you believe that, then why would you take all this stuff about this advanced race of half God, half human, that this advanced civilization that existed so long ago, why would you take all of this and not agree with where he said it was? Where did he say it was? Just outside the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Straits of Gibraltar. So just off the western shore of Europe in the Atlantic Ocean. That's where he was pretty specifically in his writings said that it was. There's a couple of others that I would tend to agree with possibly a little bit. One is yours, Mr. Brett, because yours is in that vicinity. Steve's a few thousand miles away. I don't really get that. I don't know how we can take this incredibly smart man's writings and say, oh, I believe this and this and this. No, this is full of crap. So if it exists, to me, it would exist where Plato said he was.
Well, I counter that by saying that if they were wiped out by what we would know now as a tectonic shift, it was a shift large enough to sink the entire island.
Which is a small continent, by the way.
Basically,
it's
yes.
a huge island.
Yeah, we have proof now of the continent of Mu that no longer exists, which was down that connected Australia to Africa and that area. Those things, if it were a tectonic shift, and the reason I believe where I believe it is because of that. It would have just and pulled
moved
it
halfway around the world.
That's never
happened.
Miles.
It's what?
It's a couple thousand miles.
It's 3,500 miles. I Googled it, and I can show you the picture from where he said it was to where you're going to say is 3,500 miles, almost halfway around the world.
Understand, but I also believe that, and this is my strictly my personal belief. I just put that out there. I believe that it wasn't just Atlantis. I believe there were several ancient civilizations that are gone, that were here, developed, grew, became, and was wiped off the planet.
So where do you think it was? Where do you think?
My guess is, and the one place we actually have proof of a city that has been sunken is in the Caribbean. And some of the proof I bring to that, and want to bring it up. Now, when I was looking this up, some people, and I'm using air quotes here because it's not me, thought that it was that the Bermuda Triangle, had something to do with Atlantis. We've already researched the Bermuda Triangle. We know that there's not actually a Bermuda Triangle, if you will. But some of the things that are there in the Caribbean that we want to talk about is the Bimini Road. Am I saying that right? I don't think I'm saying that. Bimini Road. Bimini Road. Gosh, that's a hard word to say.
Just say it confidently and we won't question it.
There you go.
The Bimini Road. It's one of the most famous pieces and one of the most biggest things that most people track to Atlantis. Basically, all it is a rock formation, an underwater rock formation discovered off the coast of the Bahamian island of Bimini. Gosh, that's a hard word. In the 1960s. The formation is composed of large, flat stone blocks. And it reminds me of the Giants Island that you went to.
Right, yeah, Giants Causeway.
Yeah. That has been compared to man-made structures like roads or walls. However, scientists think that that's a natural foundation. If you've ever seen the pictures, if that's natural, I am a very small, petite, Oriental woman. Okay, that just doesn't happen.
That's like their knee-jerk reactions. Oh, it's just natural formation,
Right?
Even though it doesn't occur anywhere else
in the entire world. And it goes from the island out into the ocean. Okay, the Yucatan Peninsula and the Maya. Some believe that Atlantis could be linked to the ancient civilizations of the Caribbean, like the Mayan. Some theorists claim that Maya had the knowledge of Atlantis and that their pyramid-like structures, similar to the one Plato described in the city of Atlantis, are evidence of this connection. The idea that a Caribbean region may be a home to an advanced civilization that influenced later cultures in America. Not only that, the Caribbean has submerged cities that have been underwater structures and formations found near the Caribbean, such as the Road, and similar formations off the coast of Cuba, that some could be the long-lost remnants of Atlantis. There's a lot of weird stuff in the Caribbean when you start looking under the water. Now, as with most of the oceans in the world, we've explored this much of it.
Right.
So, and by that much, I mean like less than an inch. Less than 10% is what we've discovered at the bottom of our ocean. But I'm encouraged by some of the things that I see coming out of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I would counter that by saying this. You mentioned the remnants of a city that was found. When Plato describes Atlantis, he said that it was bigger than Asia Minor and Libya combined, ancient Libya. Mm-hmm. Asia Minor is modern-day Turkey. Ancient Libya is northern Africa. Libya, Morocco, Algeria combined. This is a small continent. Yeah. So you found a city. Where's the rest of the continent?
Under 1,000 feet of water, still waiting to be discovered?
We can find ships that sink. 73 years after the Titanic sank, we found it in 12,500 feet depth, which is at or deeper than most of the area where he described it as being. But we can't find a continent?
Well, I would counter that to say that the Titanic was made of steel. You know, it was made of very hard. Now, that being said, it's brittle thin now. They don't allow people to go anywhere near it to touch it because of it's a landmark, if you will, although a macabre one. But we don't know what the buildings were made of in Atlantis. And we don't know, and I use this, and I hate to use this, but we just had half an entire American city burned to the ground that, you know, if we don't rebuild that in 50 years, you won't even know it was a city. So nature has a way of claiming what nature wants to claim. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with that. But even when nature reclaims it, we can find ships, we find cities. But you're saying that we haven't been able to find a continent.
I'm saying, what I'm saying is we don't know what caused the continent to go away. If you're going to lose an entire continent, it has to be something
cataclysmic.
I mean, something on the ever that no human alive today has ever been a part of.
I have the answer.
What's that?
I know exactly where it is.
Where?
Tell us.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just arguing with Jerry.
It is in the Sahara Desert. At the eye of the Sahara, also called the Richat structure. So I got a lot of my information from a guy named Jimmy Corsetti. He's been on Joe Rogan a ton of times. His YouTube channel is called Bright Insight, so definitely check him out. So the Eye of the Sahara, it is in modern day Mauritania, on the western end of Africa. This geological feature is unlike anything in the world. You can see it pretty well from satellite images if you just look it up. It's pretty amazing. It's not real.
Wait, it's like me?
Yes.
Wow.
Wait, you can. I don't know. You're big, but you're not that big.
no, I meant the pretty amazing part.
Okay. I don't know if we're seeing you from a satellite. So, it's not really well known. I didn't really know about it until I started researching Atlantis.
Slight pause. We've got a guy that's losing his intestines over here.
We broke him.
Yes, we really do.
So, the structure has the same concentric circles described by Plato with an opening to the sea at the south. So it looks exactly like it was described. Atlantis was said to be surrounded by large rectangular plains, which can be seen for hundreds of miles on both sides of the reshot. It was said that Atlantis was made of black, red, and white colored stones, which match, coincidentally, the stones found in this area. Atlantis has an abundance of precious metals, such as gold. It just so happens that this area had gold in significant quantities. So English literature from 1851 actually says that it was a well-authenticated fact that previous to the discovery of America, Europe was supplied to a great extent with gold from Mauritania, the same region as the restructure structure.
The country, right?
Right.
Yeah.
A king named Mansa Musa, have you guys heard of him?
Yep.
He ruled this area in the late 1200 to early 1300s. Is considered the richest man to have ever lived. I think his estimated net worth was about 400 billion. So he's worth more than Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos combined. He owned the Bambouk gold mines that account for more than 50% of the world's gold supply today. So these gold mines literally gave us 50% of the world's gold supply today. I thought that was insane. In the literature from 1851, it's also stated that there was an abundance of elephant ivory, which also lines up with Plato saying that there's a great number of elephants on the island. There's also existing cave art around the reshot structure that depicts elephants as well. So we know that elephants most likely was in that area at some point. There was said to have been 2 springs of water from beneath the earth, one of warm water and the other of cold. As of right now, the area is barren. However, there was a study from 1999 citing that this area once contained a hot spring. So again, it's starting to add up. I'm going to keep blowing your mind, Jerry. Don't worry.
I've read this.
Good.
Most of it anyway, not all.
It was said that there were mountains to the... This is what blew my mind. So it was said that there was mountains to the north. There is a mountain range that is massive to the north of the reshot structure. Get this. I want you to guess what the mountain range is called. I want you all to guess.
No idea.
Atlas.
Oh, wow.
It's called the Atlas Mountain Region. It was named after the firstborn king of Mauritania. This is the This is the same name as the first king of Atlantis. Now, I'm not. And Jimmy Corsetti, he said that he wasn't claiming that this first king of Mauritania was the same king as the king of Atlantis, but what he did say was, in cultures, if my name's John, I might name my son John, or my grandson might be named John. So names pass on through and through different cultures. It was said to have had rivers that flowed through Atlantis. Obviously, it's a desert right now, but recent scientific studies show that there was a river called Tamanrasset that flowed from the Atlas Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, directly in the path of the reshot structure. It's estimated to have existed 11,000 years ago, which happens to be around the same time that Atlantis was said to have existed. There is evidence of water erosion around the area that can be seen from satellites in space, ripping through the reshot structure. It almost looks as if a massive force of water went from the Mediterranean Sea all the way through West Africa. And this lines up with the description of how Atlantis was destroyed, sunk due to earthquakes and floods. So, if this was so science have found a debris field that was caused by a tsunami that rips right through the eye of the Sahara that is nearly 200 miles wide. So that's wider than the peninsula of Florida. I mean, so this is a huge area. This was estimated to have happened around 11,000 years ago. So they think that that both of these are related, and that what Plato had claimed was sinking of the city was actually a huge tsunami that came through. There is also a volcano in the area called Imiku. Oh, go ahead.
I started to ask a question. I think I read some of this. So according to this, it didn't sink into the ocean,
Right.
as Plato described.
Right.
It was a tsunami that briefly
Just wiped it out,
submerged and then went away, and it was land once again.
Right.
Okay. Which is very different from what Plato described, but I get it.
And that's kind of what I was getting at the beginning, where if this is passing down through mostly word of mouth, I mean, there might have been writings that just didn't make it to what we know today, but
Sure.
That would, something like a tsunami would have been, it's very realistic to think that it was just changed to, the city sunk.
Well, we also know that tsunamis today will wipe out entire portions of cities that are on the coast.
Right. And this was a ginormous tsunami. And like I said, the remnants of it can still be seen from space. So there's a volcano in the area called Imikusi. It's the last known lava flow of this volcano was estimated to have been between 15,000 and 12,000 years ago.
It's what Jerry has. It's his Coke. It's in a koozie. Sorry.
It's not a koozie. I have a koozie at home. Thanks to Brett, I have several koozies. Care to tell them what kind of koozie that is?
You
were so nice enough to buy me.
Koozies.
Hot two.
So the last known lava flow was estimated to have been between 15,000 and 12,000 years ago. If you look at satellite images, you can see where the lava flow was, and you can see that there was you can see where the path of water that went around it took, because it erodes some of that lava flow, meaning that the flooding had to have happened after the volcanic activity. So again, this is just adding to the argument that this event happened around the time of Atlantis. You can see evidence of salt in and around the research structure. If you look at satellite images of the area, there's also evidence of aquatic life that has been discovered, such as mollusks, which have been carbon dated between 15,000 and 7,700 years ago. So there was definitely water in this area at one point. The Sahara region is believed by scientists to have been full of animal and plant life during this time that Atlantis was suspected to have existed. Atlantis was said to have been a hub of trade between people of different languages and nationalities. Again, this is supported by the fact that we know there were rivers that flew through this area. One of the arguments against the fact that it's just in the middle of the ocean was the fact that it's this hub of trade. Not a lot of people would go out of their way to just go to some island in the middle of the ocean to trade. Usually they're around epicenters, like in the near some sort of river that connects those two land structures. And lastly, again, this is just another. This blew my mind. We have found a map that was made by a Roman named Pomponius Mela, who was the earliest known Roman geographer from around 43 AD. He titled this map The Habitable World of Pomponius Mela, and on the map, a place is labeled Atlantia, which is literally the exact same geographical region of the research structure. So, we found Atlantis.
That's debatable. But if you remember what I said earlier, the Caribbean to me is not logical. But I said there was one that I would come closer to agreeing with, and it's yours. That there's more evidence, and there's quite a bit. But it would require you to take a lot of what Plato said and skew it drastically. For instance, he said it was an island. This is not an island, never was an island, never, when I say never was, they say that it was at one point. This area was an island at one point. They believe that happened roughly 60 million years ago. Nowhere in the vicinity of 10,000 years ago the tsunami would explain a lot. But it would also mean that he was greatly mistaken in a lot of his description of the island. Once again, if it was passed down for 10,000 years, basically word of mouth, it's possible a lot of facts could have been misconstrued. Bottom line, I still say what I did in the beginning. Of all the different theories, I would probably have to go with the reshot more than any of them.
Well,
If it existed, which it does.
Here's the thing. I absolutely would agree that the reshot is probably the best shot. But I
like the word pun. I like
thanks.
your word pun.
I appreciate that. The thing that I like to think about, though, is a couple of points you put in there, that the area was once rife with life, was once probably green. That stuff happens. The world changes.
It does.
In the Perry Reese map, as an example, showed pictures almost to the within yards. Did a whole map of Antarctica that showed green, lush forest, which a lot of people contribute to what? Some sort of polar shift that changed everything. And it's very likely that the Sahara was involved in that same polar rift. The Younger Dryas, which happened between 12 and 26,000 years ago, was a big world event. And I can't not put the two pieces together, to me, honestly. I like the reshot structure. Good job, Brett. Jerry, tell us why we're wrong.
Well, there are many reasons. We'll start with the lack of corroboration. Part of this, the beginning, is going to be recycling stuff that you guys have talked about. According to Plato, Atlantis existed 9,000 years before his time. He wrote Timaeus and Critias around 360 BC, roughly 12,000 years ago today. He described the founders as being half god, half human, demigods, if you will. According to him, they were descendants of Poseidon and the mortal woman named Cleito, both figures in Greek, what? Mythology. Oh, that's a very good reason to believe that suddenly this story is not meant to be myth, which is the root word of mythology, but meant to be taken literally. Plato described the air as being a huge island the size of Asia Minor and ancient Libya. We talked about it. You're talking about something the size of Turkey, Libya, Africa, Northern Africa. A huge island, a small continent. Now, we would have to believe that he was absolutely wrong in where it was, because we have searched that area. Just west of the Straits of Gibraltar, we have searched, and there's nothing in that vicinity that resembles a sunken continent. So you would have to believe that it was, as Brett said, and there's a lot of people who do believe that this was not a permanent island, that it was a landmass that was temporarily covered by tsunami and very quickly become land again. But you would have to believe that. You'd also have to believe that he was wrong in the location, that he was wrong in the fact that it was an island. Again, we talked about that he described these people as having a unrivaled naval force, very strong military, an advanced civilization, very skilled in agriculture, engineering, navigation. And then after angering the gods, their greed, the power-hungry politicians, and moral decay, the gods decided to punish them, sent earthquakes. And within a day, a single day, which, by the way, we have examples, and you listed a few, of where pretty good sized land masses have sunk. And every single one of those that we know of, it took not days, not weeks, not months, not centuries, not millennium. It took millions of years for it to happen.
So
he said it happened in 24 hours.
We couldn't put too many sailors on the island.
Or it would tip and
fall
fall over.
Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not, congressman actually brought this up in Congress.
I'm never not going to take a chance in making that dig. I'm sorry.
He's not making that up. We had several years ago a congressman. What island was it? Do you remember?
Guam.
We had a congressman that I don't even remember
he
what
was
they were
talking
discussing.
to a naval. They wanted to increase the number of troops
base
there. Yep.
And his fear was
that if we put too many troops on the island, that it would tip over
and turn upside down. Yeah.
True fact.
How do we even function as a country?
But you know what amazes me more than the fact that we elect people like this?
Voted for them.
They kept voting for him.
We continue to vote the same people.
You know why?
Year after year.
I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
But
No, that really happened.
That's crazy.
Please continue, Jerry. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But with all these things that I've talked about, all these things I've discussed, that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is that the world forgot about them. No one mentioned them. No one talked about them. Not once.
Well, nobody wrote about them, right? We can't confirm that nobody talked about them.
True. We have no idea of every spoken conversation. We don't even have a record of every written because a lot was destroyed. But we do have a ton. Yeah. We do have a ton of written records. Some from Egypt go back thousands of years before Christ. And how many times did they mention Atlantis? Either one of you?
No.
0. No one in recorded history had ever mentioned Atlantis. It had never been mentioned. But suddenly, somehow, miraculously, all this information, great detail, intricate knowledge, made its way to Mr. Plato. And he described it in great detail. He described the city. He told how their government worked. He told who their rulers were. Great amounts of information had somehow been passed to him. Now, there's no evidence to suggest that ancient Greeks widely believed in the historical existence of Atlantis, even during Plato's time as well. It's more likely that the story was understood as a thought experiment or a fictional narrative used to convey deeper philosophical messages. And I'll get into that more in a minute. But yeah, lack of corroboration. What are the odds that we had this amazing advanced society, half God, half human, that basically ruled the world, almost took over the entire world? Greece finally defeated them. That was the only thing that stopped them from conquering the entire world, according to Plato. But as soon as they went away, the world forgot about them. Oh, by the way, he also said that they had ambassadors throughout the world. So even though their island was destroyed and sunk, according to him, they had representatives and ambassadors in countries throughout the world. And apparently they never wrote anything. They never... It's amazing.
At least those writings did not survive, right. The 9,000 years up to the point of Plato.
Right. There's no archaeological evidence. Despite extensive exploration and archaeological research, no physical evidence of Atlantis has ever been found. None. No ruins, no artifacts, no tools. No other tangible remains that could be attributed to an advanced civilization that even remotely resembles Plato's description has been discovered anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean, or in fact anywhere in the world. To put this in perspective, we found the Titanic. I mentioned this earlier. A single boat. 73 years after it sank, we could find a boat. But to believe this, we can't find a continent.
Well, we had a very narrow spot to search for.
According to Plato's description, we have an exact location of where Atlantis was.
Well.
Number 3, geological implausibility. There is no known geological event in the recorded past in that time frame that I was able to find that they believed would have caused a catastrophic and sudden disappearance. 24 hours. You're talking about a continent that was sunk, according to Plato, in 24 hours. There's no geological event on record anywhere in history that would have caused this damage in this time frame. Again, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask a really dumb question.
Sure.
During
No question
Plato's
is dumb, except those unasked.
During Plato's time, he was an astrologer.
He's a philosopher. He was many things, but he was known as a philosopher.
Yeah. Did they ever record sightings of the moon?
I would have to.
I'm just curious.
When I go further, why don't you Google that?
I will.
But before,
I would say that, let me add this and I'll give you all the time.
Yeah.
I would say that what I just said does not apply to the tsunami that you mentioned. If it was not an island and it was a landmass that
That's
was
what I was about
attached,
to say.
a tsunami could be explained multiple times. It doesn't take that large of an earthquake to cause a tsunami that could do this. Again, you're going to have to begin to very liberally interpret what Plato wrote, but this would not preclude the tsunami that you're referring to. Is that what you wanted to add?
Yeah, yeah. And I was just going to say, even the 24 hours, I'm just thinking of how stories would have passed down. They would have, when you're telling a story, you want it to be as interesting as possible. So if you're like, oh, yeah, over the week, they were, wiped out because of this tsunami. Or you could say, yep, they sunk in a day. It's just more interesting. I could see how stories would develop. I also want to say that like you said, we don't have any writings. We don't even, so the first record of like a written language was around 2600 BC, right? So that's when we think that they, civilization started to write down, they needed some sort of alphabet to write their language down. Otherwise, it was majoritively just spoken. So again, that's one thing. I mean, there could have been language written before that, but obviously it didn't last for us to have discovered it. Another thing I wanted to bring up is Plato says that this was passed down from like poetry and stories. Have you guys ever heard of Ring Around the Rosie?
Sure.
You know what's that's from?
The origin
Black
of it? No.
The Black
Oh, yes,
Plague.
yes, I have heard this. I have.
In
I have heard that.
1350s, my daughter, who doesn't have any idea what the Black Plague is, knows the Ring Around the Rosie.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So songs and poetry and things like that, I think, could survive those, especially as it's passed down. Obviously, less and less people would have known about it, but and I think that there's also, just with how stories are told and how it's passed down, I just think of if somebody was, so just imagine we have no cell phones, no internet, and
How
I'm
glorious would that be?
Oh, it'd be awesome. But so you're living in Africa, right? You have no access to anybody. And then you go to America. How would you describe America?
Yeah.
Utopian society,
Right.
right? And so back then,
They have clean water out of a thing.
right.
They
This
don't have
could
to
have been,
walk miles to get it.
this didn't have
Do
to
you
be
remember the
a,
girl from Africa that we talked to?
They
We
always have
happened by
electric.
chance to
Yeah.
talk to this girl from Africa.
Right.
And we were just doing a test episode 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And this girl come on from South Africa. And we said we was going to get her on the show and
We lost
we ended up
contact,
losing contact. But
unfortunately.
this woman, in her description of what she mentioned, one of the biggest problems they had is intermittent power.
right.
She was talking about how that her brother-in-law had a butcher shop basically, and how he would come in and open the store some mornings and all the meat was ruined because power had went off the night before. And when she heard that we have not serious problems, but some power outages in America, she was blown away.
Yeah.
She thought we were some utopian society
Right.
where these problems don't exist.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, is that maybe this city wasn't, started by a demigod, and there was complete peace and utopian. Maybe it was just it was an advanced society compared to the time.
And Brent, let me take that a step further. There are hundreds of civilizations that say they were started from a demigod mating with human women.
Right.
If I'm a 4-year-old and I see Hulk Hogan on the street in his prime, he looks like a god to me.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the same thing you're saying. Just because it doesn't make sense. Maybe they were a bigger race. Maybe they were of bigger stature. Their food supply was always constant, so they were allowed to grow bigger. That is part of how Americans are the way we are. We always have access.
Yeah.
But almost every civilization in their history shows, we were started by a demigod and mating with our women.
Right.
The Nephilim is an example of that. That's how they
Not
became
most civilizations, but some.
a lot.
The Britons don't.
Right.
Greece doesn't.
Well, in this time,
Yeah,
France,
we stopped
Spaniards,
caring about the
Germans.
Britons in 1776.
and with Plato, I mean, he's going to be making, Greek mythology comparison.
That's what he knows.
Right. And that's probably the way stories were being passed down at that point, right? Is through Greek mythology.
Let me finish
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
one last thing.
Sure, please do.
I've given 3 primary reasons why that I think it doesn't exist. I don't think it's fair to just leave it at that. So if he didn't write it as a literal representation of an actual place, then what was his intent? I believe, as most philosophers then and now believe, that there's a pretty simple explanation. Keep in mind, his mentor was who? Socrates. He was taught by Socrates.
Socrates.
Do what?
Socrates.
Socrates. Do you guys remember what happened to Socrates? What brought about his demise?
He was killed.
Why?
I think he was he speaking out against the government?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
What did he say about the government?
Bloated.
He said that
A lot
they
of
were
the things we
bloated.
say.
He said that they were corrupt. He said that politicians were power hungry. Socrates was charged with impiety, which is not having reference to those in authority. And he was charged with impiety and corrupting the youth. He was found guilty and he was executed. So I wonder if maybe, just, hear me out, just possibly, his protege also believed that and wanted to teach the same thing, but was afraid to say it, come out and say it, because he already saw what happens then. You get killed. So he found a way to tell a story about this great utopian place that suffered from what problems? Oh, yeah. The
Moral
same
decay.
problem as what Socrates was saying happened to Athens and Greece. Moral decay, power-hungry politicians. And what did he say happened? It caused the downfall of this civilization. At the time he wrote this, it was not taken literally. It was taken to be that he was doing nothing but what his mentor, Socrates, he was teaching the same thing. So that's what most people believe that he did then and now. So that sums up. You guys tell me why I'm wrong.
And and building on that, we see history repeat itself. Almost every advanced civilization goes through that same cycle. If you look at the Greeks, the Romans,
Very
us.
true.
Persians.
Very true.
So yeah, and I think that if Atlantis was some sort of advanced civilization, it would have probably gone through that same cycle. And so if that story was passed down, I can see both things. If you think of, well, he just created this story to kind of inform people that, hey, the government's bad. He could have heard this story and again recorded it to re-emphasize that same argument.
Well, I think there's 2 parts to this. There's part of me that wants to and certainly does believe that prior to the Younger Dryas, I believe that there were probably one or more great civilizations on Earth. However, the other part of me believes that one of my favorite authors, Christopher Moore, can write an amazing book and take you to these places and describe the people that are there.
In such great detail.
With such great detail and with such clarity that you can visually see them in your mind. And it's all made up. And he's just telling a story to entertain. In this case, Christopher Moore is kind of a comedy writer. He's funny. I like that. It's easy on the brain. Plato, not so much. He was teaching a lesson about what happens when you get stuff. So I can see both sides. So part of me says that I absolutely believe what Graham Hancock says when he talks about prior civilizations prior to the Younger Dryas. But I also believe in this particular case, there's a lot to be said that Plato's saying, hey, you guys don't listen up. This is what's going to happen to you. And he tries to say it in a way that doesn't get him executed.
Right.
Through an allegory, through a parable. So, Brett, we'll start with you tonight. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you believe that Atlantis... How should we frame this question? I think that's the... Did Atlantis, as described by Plato, exist?
No, not fair. We never do that.
Okay.
We always say, does it deserve more or less coverage?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think that it existed. I think that it was a place. I think that the way Plato described it as being like formed by gods, this utopian society, I think that it is no different than, say, when we talk about the Greeks or the Romans. I think that it's an advanced society for the time. It's a society that everyone looked to as. Uh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add this one. What?
I didn't think he was through. I was going to let him finish.
Well, I was just going to add this one part because something he said there just made it click to me. For the first people that ever came up on Göbekli Tepe, they would have thought the same thing. Holy, look, they have a place they sleep inside. How amazing is that?
Sure.
So I just want to throw that out.
Yeah,
so please go ahead.
It's exactly like where I'm going with this. I don't think it's as mystical as Plato is describing, but I think it was a real place. I think it was in the Reshot region. I think that, or the Reshot structure. I think that that's where it was. I think that all the evidence kind of points to that. So I think it's thumbs up. I think it's cool. I think it's cool to learn about. I think it's worth knowing about just as much as Greek society or Roman society is. So
I'll go next because I'll leave the last. I'm always last. So I don't want to be last tonight. So I'm just like I said before. I'm really torn. I absolutely believe Atlantis is real. I believe, like you, Brett, that the rickshaw structure was it. I don't necessarily, and almost verbatim, I don't necessarily believe that it was this awe-inspiring to us today type civilization. They may have had spears, and to the people that had not come to that, see that, it's amazing. It's wonderful. And I honestly believe Plato saw these people, and I don't doubt that he came in contact with them. Maybe I don't believe that they were this amazing race. I think he elevated them a lot to use them as an example for the people that he was trying to write home to, if you will.
Well, he wouldn't have come in contact with them. He would have just heard.
Right.
He would have just heard about them through stories,
Right.
But
which is where a lot of the, as you were saying, I've been in experiments. I know you have. You may as well. You ever been in a room when they do a test, a room full of people, and it works best if you're in a horseshoe, and they have the first guy whisper something to the next guy, and it has to pass around the table. And in this room of 10, 15, 20 people, how many? It doesn't matter. Yeah, I've seen it down to like 10 or 12. That story, the final story, will be so far different in a period of a few minutes. Yeah. Can you imagine how much the story would change if it was told over 9,000 years?
Yeah. So I absolutely believe it was a place. I love learning about it. I would love to have, if I could go back in time, I'd like to go see. So thumbs up, Brett. Jerry?
I do not believe that it existed. This is no different than almost anything else with me. I have a really hard time believing anything when there isn't empirical evidence. And so, no, I don't believe it existed. If it did exist, I agree with Brett. The odds are it was probably in the reshot structures. Did I pronounce that correctly? As far as the bottom line question, this is why I was begging you to change the definition from did it exist or not to the way we normally do it, which is does it deserve more or less news coverage? 110% believe it needs more coverage because here's the deal. Plato had two proteges, Aristotle and forget the other one's name. Aristotle thought it was a joke. He thought this was never intended to be real. The other protege believed it wholeheartedly. They were the sons of the guy that wrote it. Yeah. If they couldn't decide, how in the hell are we going to decide 2,000 years later? So there may not be empirical evidence. There's still any story that's being passed along for 2,000 years needs more discussion, more research until we know for sure one way or the other. So 110% say it needs more coverage.
Wow. Awesome. 3 thumbs up for a change. How
2
about
weeks in a row.
Woo, I'm impressed. That was an interesting episode, but our journey isn't over yet. If you stay tuned, we have an exciting bonus story coming up after this commercial break.
Hi, this is Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. When it comes to buying a home, the process can be overwhelming and confusing. With so many options, it can be hard to know where to start. That's why it's important to work with a certified mortgage loan originator. I have the knowledge and expertise to guide you through the process and find the best mortgage option for you. I will work with you every step of the way to ensure that you are getting the best deal possible. So if you're looking to purchase or refinance, please reach out to me at 502-680-0953. So don't take on the stress of buying a home alone. Work with me and I will make your dream a reality. Trust the professionals and make your home buying experience a positive one. MLS ID 448908, DAS Acquisition Company, LLC, doing business as USA Mortgage, MLS ID 227262. This is not a commitment to lend. Additional terms and conditions apply. USA Mortgage is equal housing opportunity.
If you would like to share suggestions for future episodes, an intriguing ghost story, or simply tell us how much you love or hate us, please get in touch with us. You can reach us via email at newsworthywithstephencherry@gmail.com or send us a text at area code 540-709-1318.
And now, back to the story. I've got a great one for you tonight, Brett.
All right.
When Catherine Coleman passed away in 1976, all of the power went out in the 800-bed hospital. Her heartbeat should have read as irregular and then moved to flatline. Her heart had been fine, although her other organs were failing, but she never went into a regular heartbeat. Catherine was simply gone in the blink of an eye. 15 minutes after she passed away, the brand new nurse, her first day on the job, who was an unbeliever, went in to take her pulse. Catherine wasn't cold. She wasn't warm. Catherine was hot. The air in the room was thick with the fragrance of roses. Not a few roses, millions of roses. The head nurse in charge came onto the unit to write up the time of death. That time was 1:13 a.m. on February the 20th. She chastised the new nurse for allowing roses on the ICU floor. Flowers simply aren't allowed on the ICU. The scent of the roses, however, didn't fill up one room or even one floor. It filled up 4 floors of the entire hospital, overpowered by the scent of roses. The scent permeated and across the underpass that was connected to the hospital, and then across the street to the adjoining hospital. There were no roses at all on the floor or in Catherine's room. But that's where the fragrance originated from. The new nurse said that she and the other nurse could barely stand in the room because the presence of the Holy Spirit was so overwhelming. The weight of glory. When they checked the notes from the previous nurse, she had scribbled that Catherine Coleman's final words and last request. She said, "I shall die at February 20th at 1:13 a.m. Please only have roses at my funeral." The new unbelieving nurse dropped in a chair, weeping, having been touched by the presence of the Holy Spirit. Only to leave this world in that kind of glory, to bring just one more into the kingdom at your death, to be greeted with roses. Catherine was met with millions of roses and her voice of her first love. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Love that story.
That's awesome.
And I throw my phone in
There you go.
the floor. Great. And Jerry, if you can't see the light,
Be the light.